Do you ever watch something happen and you just wish you'd never seen it, never had to be involved in it, and never had to imagine what it would be like to experience it? Because that is exactly what happened right after the Women's World Cup final. See, the Women's World Cup just ended. Spain won it for the first time, which is crazy for a couple of reasons that we're going to talk about later, because it had been surrounded by drama. But nothing in that long list of toxicity and drama would match what was going to happen after they got the trophy. See, you get the trophy, you walk across the stage. There's roughly, give or take, 47 cameras on that stage. Also on that stage, this hunk of creepiness, Luis Rubiales, who is, it happens, the president of the Royal Spanish Football Federation, which is, of course, in charge of all soccering and footballing that happens in Spain, and is somebody that gets to bask in the glory of what the women's national team just achieved. Now, while he's on the stage and all of this jubilation is going on, Jennifer Hermoso walks by, a member of the Spanish national team, to which Luis Rubiales' natural response is, you know, entirely normal human behavior. But it's important to be clear here. This did not happen on a security camera in a back alley somewhere. This happened on probably the most notable stage in women's soccer, in women's football, and arguably the most notable stage that Luis Rubiales will ever be on, and he still couldn't keep his mouth to himself. And if you couldn't figure it out at this point, this was not exactly a consensual action. Jennifer Hermoso is not Luis Rubiales' girlfriend, wife, somebody that would have remotely been expecting Luis Rubiales to really just go on in and... Now, I'm not going to show you a video of the kiss, because I don't want the FIFA copyright department to come on to me the same way Luis Rubiales would if I played for the Spanish women's national team. It's a 5-second video. You can find it anywhere. And in that video, it is very obvious that at the very least, Jennifer Hermoso is surprised at what is happening, and that what is happening is abnormal, just because we have eyes and we're humans. Of course, after this happens, Jennifer Hermoso comes out with a statement. I felt vulnerable and a victim of an impulse-driven, sexist, out-of-place act without any consent on my part. Simply put, I was not respected. And as this storm starts to grow the next day, Luis Rubiales admits that he made a mistake. I was wrong. It was done without bad faith in a moment of maximum effusiveness. I really appreciate him reaching into the thesaurus for his apology. At least we know he didn't use ChatGPT. But if you watch the video, there is a clear moment of deliberation after they hug in happiness, which is normal, human, expected behavior in a moment where you're celebrating winning the World Cup, where they then separate. He then grabs her face and then decides to, you know where this is going. There's a beat there, a moment of silent reflection before he decides to out himself as a creep in front of the entire world. Over the course of the week after Spain won the World Cup, news came out that Rubiales was going to resign, which made sense because that sounds a lot better than him getting fired, which you assumed the Spanish Federation was going to do if he didn't resign for just being a creep. Like, I feel like a minimum job requirement of being the head of a football federation should be being able to keep your face to yourself during a celebration. But by the time we got to his resignation speech on Friday, we were treated to one of the most spectacularly, stupendously weird, and dare I say, creepy press conferences I have ever seen, and I don't even speak Spanish well enough to understand what was going on. Now, the highlight of this press conference, it was him chanting, essentially, over and over again, "I will not resign." He did it with such fervor that the confused crowd started to applaud, which I almost don't blame them, because if I didn't understand what he was saying or why he was saying it either, I would kind of just be rooting for his general enthusiasm here. I mean, he's just saying it over and over, trying to rile up some sort of crowd reaction. But applauding it is still very weird. The media is here expecting the head of the federation to resign. He's just standing there going, "I will not resign." It's straight out of Wolf of Wall Street. He then reversed course and described the kiss, translated as spontaneous, mutual, euphoric, and done with consent, which is interesting because that means he's acquired the consent somewhere between Monday and Friday when it happened on Sunday. He also, of course, added that he would fight to the end. He will not resign.
I'm not leaving.
And as we all know, that worked out well for Jordan Belfort in Wolf of Wall Street because he eventually gets arrested. Now, after this press conference, obviously, Jenny Hermoso and the rest of the Spanish women's national team had some thinking to do. And they came up with a pretty ingenious way to put pressure on the Spanish Football Federation. they basically all sided with Jenny Hermoso because, obviously, and they all signed a letter saying that they would not play for the national team again, and as well as 50 other players that could play for the national team for Spain signed that same statement saying they were not going to play for the Spanish national team until Luis Rubiales was taken care of. Because, and I'm just making an inference here, they don't want to be around him for fear of, how did he describe it? Spontaneous, mutual, euphoric, and done with consent celebrations. Because when I'm being spontaneous, I also have 73 people sign something saying they won't come near the organization I'm in until I'm gone. It's just part of spontaneity. But we haven't even gotten to the most insane part of all of this yet, the Federation's response. Because the sane thing to do would have been, oh, you're not resigning, you're fired. Wow, solve that problem. No way. Now, they took the car, and they were driving down the highway towards doing the right thing, but then they swerved off on the exit to do the absolutely insane thing instead. They accused Jenny Hermoso of lying about the incident that happened on the stage of the World Cup final, that everybody on planet Earth with an internet connection can watch from any angle. And just so you understand what we're talking about here, when you hear the phrase Foot Pro, that's talking about the players' union that came out with that statement that all of those players weren't going to play for Spain anymore. The statement said, the evidence is conclusive. The president has not lied. Well, I agree that he didn't lie when he said he wasn't going to resign, but basically everything else, that's a little hard to believe. The RFEF, the Federation, and the president will demonstrate each of the lies that are spread either by someone on behalf of the player or, if applicable, by the player herself. Lies such as, he kissed me, and I did not want him to. And then they threatened to initiate the corresponding legal actions. We're talking about taking legal action against Jenny Hermoso after she was hung on international television. This is the Federation. This isn't, Luis Rubiales is the leader of the Federation, but there are a lot of other people that make up the Federation, and they are the ones saying this. That's not even the only crazy thing that they said. They said that the players have an obligation to play for the national team. They didn't even have to make that argument. Why are they even bringing that up? They've got a hard enough row to hoe when they're trying to convince people that Luis Rubiales isn't a giant creep who just randomly kissed somebody on the face for no reason. Sorry, euphoric spontaneity. Now they have to go after all those other players that signed on with the Foot Pro thing saying they weren't going to play for Spain, saying no, they have an obligation. And of course, in the following day after Luis Rubiales' disaster class press conference, they released another statement, which has since been deleted, that said, we have to state that Miss Jennifer Hermoso lies in every statement she makes against the president. This is just a militant disregard for the thoughts and feelings of the entire Spanish national team, Jenny Hermoso in particular, and my own eyes for having to watch this happen. Not that that's the most important thing, but I'm involved in this too. I have been unduly affected by Luis Rubiales. I would have preferred to never known he existed in the first place. Like every other leader of every other football federation who I cannot name. And because clearly the Spanish Federation is having some sort of catastrophic meltdown, FIFA stepped in. And anytime FIFA is the moral guiding compass, you are doing something horribly wrong. This should be the litmus test. If you were ever being reprimanded by FIFA for doing something morally wrong, how wrong are you? There's nowhere lower to go than that. See, FIFA stepped in and suspended Luis Rubiales from all football-related activities, presumably to protect the faces of the people around him. It also opened disciplinary proceedings against Rubiales for potentially violating the game's basic rules of decent conduct. And I'm bringing this up because I said I was going to mention it earlier. There were a lot of players that would have been on Spain's World Cup roster that weren't because they had already withdrawn from Spain's national pool over concerns with the coaching staff and things that could potentially lead to injuries. It was a bit more abstract than somebody just trying to make out with somebody else after winning the World Cup, but they had issues long before with the Federation and the women's national team, and this was just the latest in a long line of issues that the women's national team had with the Spanish Federation. And it's since come out that the Federation has done other awful things, like attempting to get Jenny Hermoso to release a statement to alleviate the pressure on Luis Rubiales. How dare you let him kiss you on the face like that? And now he has to deal with all the trouble and you have to bail him out. Make sense? Fortunately, the Spanish Federation and Luis Rubiales seem to be on an island here. Everybody from the president of Barcelona to the prime minister of Spain to me sitting in this chair has been condemning the utter insanity of what has been going on around Rubiales and Hermoso ever since. But perhaps Jenny Hermoso said it best. She said that no woman should see herself needing to answer questions based on the blunt images that the entire world has seen. True that. And most importantly, with FIFA having suspended Luis Rubiales, faces everywhere are a little more safe. Okay, I thought this was over. The video was all set to come out, and I honestly, probably naively, thought that the story was basically over, that logic would prevail and Luis Rubiales was going to just eventually get banned by someone and then everybody else would get out of the way. I mean, there was this massive public outcry to make things happen, but then in the one day after I put that video together, things just kept getting crazier. First of all, Luis Rubiales' mom has announced that she's going to go on a hunger strike. Now, I understand that you want to protect your son and stuff, but wouldn't this better be used as like a learning opportunity? I mean, it's all on camera and everything. A hunger strike. That is taking this to like social injustice level proportions that I don't think something that appears so black and white needs to be dealt with. That's not even the most insane headline that I saw, because the Spanish Federation has started to fracture, which makes sense. Now, the regional members of the Spanish Federation in the past day have called for Luis Rubiales to resign. This was happening at the same time that the top of the Spanish Federation was claiming that the Spanish government was getting involved in their affairs and that they should be removed from UEFA. Like, literally removing the teams, the leagues, and everything from UEFA. Because the Spanish government was getting involved in a potential prosecution, for sexual assault of Luis Rubiales, right? They're looking into potential criminal charges for Luis Rubiales' actions. And that is now government meddling in the Spanish Federation. So they're claiming the government's meddling in the Federation, and that should get the Federation disqualified as kind of a threat to the government, like, don't meddle with us or else we'll get removed from every competition. I mean, if that threat actually goes through, what we're talking about is Spanish clubs not being in any UEFA competition. I mean, this is beyond the nuclear option. This is the let's end the world option because we can't get away with, How is it getting crazier? How did it get crazier in the one day after I talked last time? Now, if the person leading your organization is facing legal action, just essentially for being a giant creep, your first reaction should not be to just blow the entire thing up and just obliterate your entire organization just so that guy can continue to be a creep, right? At the very least, I feel like the bare minimum is a suspension with pay while the investigation happens so that you make sure that he isn't the giant creep, because clearly they either don't think he's this giant creep, in which case let it play out and he'll be proven he's not a giant creep, even though it's on camera and he looks like a creep. The other side of that is they do know he's a giant creep, and they don't care. And they're willing to go nuclear to protect him anyways, or he's strong-arming them into it, in which case, everybody else in the world's against you. What are you doing? But if you listen to Rubiales, there's a witch hunt going on because he can't just randomly, attack people's faces. It's fake feminism, and UEFA should totally intervene to save him from laws.